is one that is very near and dear to my heart as well as to Next Steps, in that attracting and retaining and developing good people is really what makes a company successful. We within Next Step work with large organizations like Adobe and Cisco. We work with small startups. And the real difference between successful companies at the small level or the big level and less than successful companies many times comes down to the right people. You can have a wonderful strategy. You can have a fabulous product. And we've all seen technology companies with fabulous products and great technology and great innovations, but they just don't execute. The people is what really ultimately leads to execution and long-term value and commitment. So within Next Step, we help organizations determine what are the right kinds of people that are going to be needed to grow into new markets. And one of the things that we've learned over the years is the very most difficult part of growing a company, especially in going into a new market, the most difficult part that leads to failure for so many organizations is hiring the right sales and go-to-market team. Hiring engineering talent is very difficult, especially in a hot economy in Silicon Valley. But hiring sales and marketing talent is triply difficult, many times because the founders, especially of startup companies, or even the executives of the larger companies, come from maybe an engineering or a technology or a scientific background. And we've all seen a lot of engineers that know very little about sales and marketing. And so when you come from that background and have that aptitude to be able to even understand what is required in sales and marketing, to be able to define what it is you're looking for, let alone attract it, recruit it, develop it, retain it, is very, very difficult. So this topic of how to define, attract, recruit, and retain key talent is a very critical one for all organizations that we see, especially in the go-to-market, but also for long-term sustainability. You've got to have the right people. And from what we've seen in the last 2 years, the dynamic of getting those right people, especially here in Silicon Valley or across the US, is triply difficult. Unemployment is down, growth is up, and more millennials are coming into the workplace. Interestingly, about 6 or 7 years ago, we had a similar panel on millennials and generations. And coincidentally, that was on a night when there had been thunderstorms in the Bay Area also. It's very bizarre that we have a panel tonight that touches on millennials on a night when there's been thunderstorms.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, thunderous sign. For those that don't live in the Bay Area or haven't been here very long, we very seldom have thunderstorms like we had today. The millennials are becoming the generation that everybody wants. The young, energetic, 20 to 30-year-old generation that is coming into the workforce with the latest skills, the latest talents, the latest technologies. As you'll hear from each of the panelists in part of our discussion, attracting, bringing them in, and keeping them for more than 2 days, more than 2 weeks, more than 2 months is very, very difficult. So in tonight's program, we've got quite a panel of experts on recruitment from EJ's viewpoint, recruitment and development, from development, recruitment, and long-term retention from Britt's viewpoint, as well as from Amar, recruitment, development of talent, as well as balancing internal talent and external or contract talent. So you'll have a lot of different perspectives from each of us. Our process for the rest of the program until 8:30 is we'll have each panelist give a little bit of their best practices and views around this topic, about 5 minutes from each panelist. And then we'll jump into some prepared questions that will go for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then open the floor to general questions that will take us up till about 8:30. If you have burning questions or comments, or you want to heckle along the way, just wave your hand. We like heckling, we like questions, we like debate, we like commentary. So feel free to jump in at any point. With that, I'll turn over to EJ.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So my name is EJ Dieterle. As far as the event is concerned, I have to give credit to Jennifer. Even though I'm a co-chair for HR at GABA, I wasn't able to help too much, for this specific panel, too many things going on. So again, kudos to you. Yeah. Okay. So apart from GABA HR, I'm the CEO of Yes Partners, which is a global executive search firm. So the focus is on recruiting, meaning in the classical American sense of headhunting. We call ourselves executive search, so the focus is a little bit more on the management side, or as I say, sort of like the middle level positions upwards. Traditionally, this is VP, C-level positions, but also clients come to us, knowing us, they said, okay, we need help further down with directors or even below that positions. We work with early stage startups here in the Valley, especially as Jennifer was already elaborating to, you have early stage founders. Typically the founders are the techies, so the engineers. And very often they come to us and say, here we need help. Very often it's a CEO, who has been there before. Number one job, of course, is fundraising. And by the way, we need your help, but by the way, we don't have money to pay you. So in a typical Silicon Valley fashion, we are getting pulled into those startups, partly in equity. We do all company functions, and in terms of industries, we go across the board. Not because we can't make up our mind, but that's where the request has been over the years. Beyond GABA, beyond Yes Partners, I'm also at this German Accelerator, which is a German government-sponsored program for startups coming here to the Silicon Valley. I'm one of the mentors there, specifically for the topic of recruitment. Then beyond that, again, I'm part of a team where we, since more than 10 years, we give US workshops in Europe, primarily in Germany, different regions on this topic of US market entry. And there also the topics have been always the same. It's about people not only finding people, but finding the right people. And I think that's what we're going to find out tonight as to what is the secret sauce. Right?
Absolutely.
My lady.
Thank you, Jay and Jennifer. My name is Britt, and I'm the VP of People, formerly known as HR, VP of People and Organizational Development at a company called PaxVax. And you can probably guess what that means. Vax for vaccines. So we're a fully integrated vaccines company. Fully integrated means we do everything from development, so R&D for vaccines, to commercialization. And we target the travel space. So that means for anyone who wants to travel to a developing country who may be in need of those vaccines. And the nice thing about the company is we also have a social mission coming with that, which means that we strive to make the vaccines available to people in developing countries. As you can tell by my accent by now, or from my accent by now, I'm originally from Switzerland. I've lived here for 16 years. Like EJ, I have a search background. In my former life in Switzerland, I ran search firms as well. And I've brought that to Silicon Valley, combining it with my passion for mission-driven organizations that are in the space of high growth. So usually I'm being brought in by companies that say, oh, we want to double in size within not a few years, but a few months or weeks. And we want to internationalize. So I've done internationalizations as far as Kenya. I built an office in Nairobi with my last company. And obviously in Europe. And I also help companies build great cultures. And while culture may sound like a different topic, I think culture very much ties into being able to create a workplace that really attracts and retains the right talent. So that much about me. We're headquartered in Redwood City. I have a site in R&D site in San Diego and a manufacturing site in Switzerland. So my job is doing sort of the tour between Redwood City, Silicon Valley, San Diego, and Switzerland. So I have the best of all worlds, climate-wise and otherwise.
Thank you, Britt. My name is Amar, Panchal. I'm a co-founder of a company called Accelerator, Inc. We are a technology staffing firm. So our primary business is providing mostly software engineering talent to large companies and exciting startups in the Valley. We started about 14 years back, and today we support our customers all across the United States, Canada, and India. And so we're headquartered in Santa Clara, but we have locations in Seattle, Washington, in North Carolina, in Toronto, and in Bangalore in India. Our mission, we think of our mission as, our mission is to enable the success of our customers looking for trusted talent and to be the employer of choice of great talent. So, we think of ourselves as we want to be the first company that customers think of when they're looking for great people. And we also want to be the first company that employees think of when they're looking for great jobs. So over the 14 years that we've been running Accelerator, we've worked with several very exciting companies, enterprises in the Valley, companies like eBay, companies like Cisco, VMware, Facebook, and so we've definitely seen practices that are good to emulate. But having started in the Valley, we are also competing with similar firms to retain and attract talent that will help us grow. So we've innovated in our own ways, and over the last 14 years, we've, many of you have probably heard of the Silicon Valley Business Journal. They have an annual ranking of best places to work, and they rank best places to work by company size. So we've been the only company that 3 years in a row stood #1 best place to work for companies our size. We've also consistently ranked amongst Inc. magazine's fastest growing companies in the country. And so, we've had some innovative practices that I look forward to sharing with you, but our business, just as Britt mentioned, or EJ or Jennifer, is dependent on good quality people, attracting them and retaining them and motivating them. And culture plays a big role in all three of these. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of our experiences in this space.
Perfect, thank you. So what I'd like to do is start with just a very general question and have each of our panelists give a perspective of what really works today, considering unemployment is down, considering people really are striving for getting the most as possible in this tech boom right now in Silicon Valley. What really works to attract good people? If I were a startup that wanted to bring in and hire new talent, what should I do to get the right people even coming to the interview? Looks like you're ready to go there, Mark.
In my experience, there's no silver bullet here. It takes work, and if there's one thing I would say, it's important to build an employment brand. And building an employment brand starts with the C-suite. Your executives have to buy into the value of building, the culture, the core values of the company, and have to lead by example. You cannot build an employment brand just by brochures or a good website. There has to be meat behind what you're talking about, and I know Britt probably has several examples that she can elaborate on. But I'll give you a simple experience that I had, and I'd never thought of it that way. So, and most of us have heard of Glassdoor. This is a site that is kind of like a Yelp, but is focused on rating employment practices of companies. And so you have employees that can either anonymously or otherwise give feedback on the companies they work for or have worked for in the past. And like every company, there's going to be positive and negative reviews about us on Glassdoor. So our marketing team frequently or constantly monitored our Glassdoor reviews, and anytime we had a negative review, I personally used to respond to that review and invite them to come and talk to me and explain or give some sort of an explanation. And I was doing it just because I really wanted to understand what was causing somebody to leave a negative review. I never thought about it as anything more than that. And then one day I was interviewing somebody for a senior recruiter role. Now this is a gentleman who's still with us, and he's closer to the retirement age. He's not the younger generation, and very, very well qualified individual. And so he had met with several people in the organization. Everybody liked him. The final meeting was with me. And knowing how hard it is to attract somebody like him, I was curious, why are you interviewing with us when you could have so many other opportunities? And he made a very interesting comment. He said that, as I was considering options, I of course went to Glassdoor to see what are the reviews. And Accelerator was the only company where the CEO was responding to reviews on Glassdoor. And I had never thought of it. And this made me realize that building your employment brand starts at the very top, and these days people look at all of these sites more than anything else. So that's my little bit of experience on how do you go about attracting them.
Build and live your brand.
I would totally agree with that, and again with that comes, as you said, Amar, very much living by the values and making them transparent. It really depends on what we mean by, what works today. And I always say it's not a one-size-fits-all. You really I would take a marketer approach and say, know thy target, right? So who are the people I want to attract? Who are the people I want to retain? Who are the people we want to develop in, and how? And really understand what makes them tick. I had the privilege and the opportunity to build a strong employer brand and a culture at a company, my previous employer, called Kiva, which is a microfinance organization online doing microfinance, giving microloans to people in developing countries. And fascinating company because it's a nonprofit that operates like a tech startup. So in culture, very much like a tech startup, but with the finances of a nonprofit. So you have to be really creative in attracting and retaining people. You cannot do it with the money. You cannot do it with paychecks. You cannot do it with benefits so much. But we had a terrific pipeline of talent. Everyone wanted to come and work at Kiva. And why? It's the mission, it's the purpose. I'm sure some of you have read, there's a lot of notion nowadays about the purpose economy, sort of a newly coined term. So especially the younger generation, as you said, Jennifer, millennials, they don't just want to work for a paycheck, and we have probably millennials in the room who can correct me if I'm wrong, but people want to have purpose. A purpose that's bigger than, obviously, the comp and the benefits they get. So that will be sort of my approach to, what works today. First, understand who are we today, who do we want to be that attractive employer that not just only attracts people, but actually also retains them. And I'm the practitioner here, so I have a huge retention challenge actually, because my people don't look for jobs. They get tapped every day. They get those calls. So I have to give them reasons to stay beyond the paycheck. Reasons to stay such that when they get those calls from recruiters, they politely decline. Right? So that's the environment we're in, and I very much believe in building from within, again, identifying what culture we want to build a very intentional culture, and then engage with people in finding out what keeps them with a company. So I don't believe in exit interviews, for example. I believe in stay interviews, and we conduct them regularly. So I just changed the framing. Instead of asking people why they leave when they leave, I try to get ahead of the curve and have managers and myself engage with people to regularly interview them. What makes you tick? What's the number one thing that gets you excited when you drive to work in the morning? What keeps you here? What is it that helps you develop in the way you want to develop? What's the number one challenge that, if we get it out of the way, would really increase your job satisfaction? So all these coaching questions, you get a lot of intelligence from people. So if we take the time to listen, our people tell us where we have to start our work. That would be my where I would start, so to really understand your population, understand what's working, what's not, do the gap analysis, and go from there. It's a long answer, probably.
Yeah, but a lot of good points. If I can just top off what Britt and Amar said, the brand, yes, it's basically before you go out and recruit in whatever way or system you are using, you have to have a brand set, because whether you do it internally or through outside, through third parties like Amar, myself, once we do our job and we attract some candidates whom we are able to talk into saying yes, so then of course the candidate comes in front of the company, said, well, we cannot talk them into accepting the job, because then it's you as the company, as the brand, you have to sell and promote in the company. So in that sense, yes, before you go outside and start recruiting in whatever way or form you do it, the brand has to be there, yes.
Sounds like the brand has to be there, and there has to be a purpose behind the brand. It's more than just simply come to work and get paid and we build a technology. You've got to build the purpose into the brand and something more than just simply the logistics of it. In doing that with today's society and the millennials, what role do things like social media and community really play in that process? I mean, Glassdoor is one example, but there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's how people interface to really understand what that purpose of the company is.
Yeah, again, talking about millennials, I would say, you have to, we all have to rethink how we may have done recruiting. So what got us here may not get us there, right? May not attract them. Mobile is just what we have to do. So everything, even if looking at our portals, our websites and what we put out there, if it's not really cool looking, easy to navigate on mobile, it's just a different way to engage. And I actually try to go a step further, and many companies do nowadays. It's not enough to just put a position out and wait for applications. Again, we have to get ahead of the curve and actually think about where is the talent of the future and start a dialogue with them, engage them in a conversation so that we build a pipeline, an external pipeline as well as an internal pipeline, such that when the opportunity arises, we have that pipeline filled. We cannot wait for, again, a posting out and then applications come in and filter. It doesn't work for key positions. So I would say technology is key. Definitely employer brands through social media. On your website, you have to have all that communication going. And again, figure out how your talent communicates and how they communicate best. Maybe one remark also on Glassdoor, instead of just having a profile there, I know a CEO who use their internal engagement survey and actually publishes the results. Now I think that's also like going ahead of the curve, to be that transparent, which is also a value that many millennials embrace and demand, not just embrace, but demand, because everything's shared, right? Everything's shared, information shared, personal lives are shared, pictures are shared, videos are shared. So you have to think about how do they communicate, what do they value, and how can we meet those needs in terms of transparency and information. I'll just give it to you.
The concept of mobile that you mentioned, I think it was 2 or 3 months back, there was actually an inflection point on the use of the internet. For the first time ever, the searches on Google, the number of searches from mobile exceeded that from desktops. And so that's a huge shift if you think about it. And so, as Britt mentioned, it's important to not just make sure all your websites and your portals are easily available on the mobile platform. In fact, now, and it's hard for established companies to make that shift. But one of the things that we're working on desperately is any new deployment that we're doing, whether it's a form that somebody needs to fill out, or whether it is our job site, job postings, we think of it as first on mobile and then on the desktop. So that's the mindset that we have to go through, that's the shift. The other major change that is happening, especially when it comes to millennials, is they are not checking emails anymore. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and sometimes I get an email from her school about something that they want us to respond to, and I forward it to her, but I know she doesn't check emails, so I have to actually call her or text her saying, hey, check your email. So it's a very interesting shift that's happening that many of us don't really recognize. As I was driving here, one of the news articles that was coming up was the dating websites, Match.com, and several of them are all owned by one company. I think it's called Match.com. And so they're filing for an IPO. And as part of their IPO filing, one of the major sort of cautionary points that they've made is one of the biggest risks we run is our promotions are all dependent on email campaigns. And we are worried that the next generation of people don't look at emails. So, I'm not on any of these sites because I'm married, but I'm assuming what they're describing is they promote, so if once you register with any of these sites, they promote matches through emails, because that's their primary way of promoting people to come back. And it's a serious, it's a significant enough risk for them that they've mentioned it in their IPO filing. So I guess the point I'm trying to underscore is the communication mechanism itself is changing, and email has been so prevalent in this industry for recruiting that unless you recognize that is no longer the medium that the next generation is using, you're completely not going to be able to reach them.
So be where they are and how they are, which is not on email.
Yeah, One. Okay, sounds like Amar is disappointed that he doesn't get any texts from Match.com. Get a cell phone so you can receive a text, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, in terms of the social medias, it is important, yes. It depends as to how you reach out. I'm having regularly discussions with clients, where at the beginning they say, well, gee, we are very active on the social media, apart from the more social sites like the Facebooks or so. We have a Twitter account, and then of course the more business-related ones, we are active, and we have a large network on LinkedIn, or the European version, the Xings. But apart from that, I think it is also really a matter of still having to actively reaching out to the folks, because again, where we are faced with on a more or less daily basis is like that. Unfortunately, also information on the social networks is wrong. According to some studies, also folks do exaggerate on the profiles, or straight out lies. So as such, some folks have more than one profile. On the candidate side, the other way around, there is also a lot of frustration that jobs are posted for actually jobs which don't exist. And sometimes the company strategy has sort of like all those job postings is because they want to see a constant flow of applicants. So just that they're in a situation where they can say, well, gee, thanks for the application, but actually we are full right now. So again, I would say, the whole social aspect, social networking aspect, it is important, but there is always two sides to it.
So the personal aspect of reaching out via some form of communication that your applicants might be interested in using, which might be text or might be some form of messenger, is better to talk one-to-one.
Yeah, so I mean, I have not received any text from Match.com ever, but apart from that, it's typically a company, whether it's in-house or third party. Basically, there is the 3 steps. First, you look into your internal networks. Whom do you know? Typically, people feel more comfortable with reaching out to folks who are in the network, simply because they are familiar with it. If the right person is there, great, But the key is always not just finding someone, but that the right person is there. And then typically then the next step is reaching outside, again through job boards. From a company's point of view, again, the ideal situation is like for a specific posting, 5 people apply, they're all qualified, 3 you invite for interviews, and 1 of them you hire. Right? Sounds good.
500 apply.
Right, exactly. And in real life, you say 500. I mean, my number would have been 300 apply. Again, pushed by the social networking thing, where things are only picked up by keywords, assuming that this is the right thing, and then again you end up frustrated because in those 500 applicants the right person you're looking for is not there. So again, there is different ways to look at it.
So is it fair to say that if 500 apply, there's some way of sorting through to determine that out of the 500, there's these 5 that you really want to come to the interview, and you would reach out personally and communicate the brand and the culture and what's good about the company to those 5 to really develop a one-to-one to encourage them to even show up for the interview? So we sometimes hear that the candidates don't even show up for the interview, the right ones.
Yeah, and I guess that would go back to the brand, right? And what is the brand? I mean, we're talking about employer brand, but it's really every representative of the organization. I always say recruiting is everyone's job. It's like marketing is everyone's job. And I go to lengths at educating my managers to really live and breathe that. And what I mean by that is how we communicate with everyone who gets in touch with the organization. And that's, nowadays we have technology facilitating that process. And we see technology to some extent also backfire because of exactly what you've described, that some applicants, candidates may think, wow, this posting has been up and I don't hear back, right? I mean, I've been on both sides and I've coached people, including executives in career transitions, and boy, I had to manage expectations in terms of their frustration of not ever hearing back. And while we could use technology to facilitate that process, it's really all about, do we communicate with them in a timely and honest fashion? Do we keep them appraised of where we are in the process? Do we tell them when the position has been filled? So all of that is brand. All of that is about, do we have open, honest, timely communication? That's part of a value and a brand. And it's unfortunately, I think some companies don't even use technology for that, but we've lost it. We've lost it in the Valley, unfortunately, as well. I recommend everyone who has a company to do a process of being their own applicant. Go through your applicant tracking system and see how user-friendly it is. You know, kind of be your own test person, and you know, it's very insightful to just see how broken the process is. So, you know, to your point, how do we select from 500 companies? So if all these things go wrong, if the people don't even, you know, if we don't make the effort to honestly and genuinely engage in conversation with them, we cannot expect anything back. It's the same with loyalty. If we're not loyal to our people, how can we expect more loyalty for them? Everything is give and take in life. That's my upbringing. But think about it. So that would be my recommendation. The rest is really process. It's an easy process. I actually consider it a very old-fashioned process of, again, sifting through resumes, whether with or without technology. And I would offer a more innovative approach to saying, really more like a talent scout, and really think about where your talent of the future is, and then leverage the people you already have, as EJ said, and you can incentivize that with referral bonuses, right? So, you know, I have my own internal talent scout. Everyone who brings in someone whom we hire gets a decent referral bonus. Even if we pay them a few $1,000, it's still, no offense, way cheaper than the 30% of an annual base salary. But he does a great job. So just, you know, think about that also in terms of cost, how we manage sort of the financing side of attracting and retaining talent, and what we can do to actually leverage our internal resources and their networks through social media or their connections.
Amar, you're doing this with technical talent, so it's going to be doubly difficult these days.
It is certainly, I mean, the demand-supply gap is certainly far wider on the technical side. So I'm a big believer in widening the net as much as you can. So clearly there's your internal network that is a good primary starting point, and then there's people who apply to your jobs as the next point of potential candidates. But the fact is that that's a very small percentage of potential candidates. Most of the candidates are not looking for jobs. They are in jobs that they are semi-satisfied with. They are not actively looking, but for the right opportunity, they would. So it's important to recognize that the first two steps are important, but that's not enough. If you want the best pool of candidates, you're going to have to go beyond job postings and people who apply to job postings. You're also going to have to go and find where those people work or find where they network and participate in those networks. And it is not a reactive process. It is something that you have to keep doing on an ongoing basis. Like Britt mentioned, who's your target audience? Once you recognize what your target audience is, you need to be participating in that target audience, and you need to be doing it before you have an opening. You need to be building that proactive pipeline of candidates that have seen your name somewhere, have potentially interacted with you. That's how you're building your employment brand in their mind. Even if they're not actively looking for a job, they still know you exist. And so that when they actually are looking for a job, they think of you first. Or they have somehow opted into maybe a best practices article or something that is of interest to them, and so they are in your applicant tracking system, and then it's a matter of how do you engage them on an ongoing basis. Even if you don't have an opening, or even if they are not looking for a job, is there a dialogue going on between you and that potential candidate, so that when you do have an opportunity or when they are actively looking, they're reaching out to you. That's my take.
And may I just add, because we're here and networking to some extent, networking nowadays really means also networking without seeing the white of the eye. So again, all online through social media, joining groups on LinkedIn or wherever it is. And so I think that's a different notion. And based on what Amar said before, you know, I don't have teenagers, but I meet the teenagers of my friends, and when I ask them who's your best friend, quite a few say their best friend is someone they've never met in person. So think about that as we're recruiting, right? So they have best friends worldwide. They've never seen them. They've never touched them. Again, very different from my upbringing, but that's the world we live in. And also teenagers do sleep with their cell phones.
If I can just add here one thing, I remember with Charlotte we had an event on some time ago, the other way around, on job hunting from the candidate's point of view. And I remember also there at the event there were several candidates, I mean again from the applicant side, who were very frustrated that they don't hear back from the recruiting side. And that's a common thing that as an applicant you are frustrated. But I have to say also, I mean, it's a completely different topic, but there again, it is very important that when you, as an individual applicant, when you apply somewhere, that you apply on a one-by-one basis. For example, if I see that I get those emails where I'm on a distribution list, where I'm copied as BCC or so, I don't reply. You know. So again, you know, in terms of the frustration, think of it also the other way around. It has to be on a one-on-one basis. Yeah.
And that's an interesting thought with the millennial generation, because one of the things that we often hear about millennials is to them it's all about me. And so it really is about personalization. They want to be individually Sally and Joe. Sally wants to be recognized as Sally and have a relationship with the company that she's talking with. And the same with Joe. It's a one-to-one kind of relationship. I'd like to kind of switch the topic a little bit in that respect of how does a company in today's world build that one-to-one relationship and really understand their current talent in order to retain them, to keep the good workers that others might be pinpointing and targeting and headhunting, trying to get to. How does that work in today's world?
If I may start on this one, I think it comes down to, again, to the planning from the company's point of view. I mean, I had also similar inquiries like Amar, where a company says, well, can you help us with the talent pipeline? I said, yes, I can, but tell me what should be in the pipeline. In other words, what talent is it that you need down the road? And the person couldn't answer me. So I said, well, I mean, it's basically, you know, if you don't know where you want to go, then I can't help you. And so a lot of it comes down with to the planning, that if you know, once you know where you want to go, then it's easy to go there. But you have to know first where you want to go.
So we're talking retention now?
Yeah.
So how to engage in dialogue with existing people? I mean, you do just that, you engage. And you do it as, my recommendation is to do it as directly as possible, if feasible. That's difficult if you have I don't know, 40,000 employees. You can't talk to everyone in person if you're the CEO or you know, if you have my role. But a lot of companies or startups are smaller and you can. And I do believe in that, actually, not just doing engagement surveys and getting the analytics, but actually do sit down with people. And you can do that one-on-one. I do that all the time. Coffee, lunch, dinner, drinks, happy hour, ice cream, socials, you know, you name it. I mean, whatever works for your culture. You can do it in small groups. I meet in entire teams, and I do just that. I say, what's working? What's not? What should we change? You know, what's the one thing that has the biggest impact? And really try to understand what keeps them here. So that will be my my recommendation, and not just do it sort of in an anonymous way, but show them that you care. And you said before that, Jennifer, that everything should be personalized. I don't think that's so new. I think everyone wants to be seen. It's a human need. We want to be seen for who we are. And the way I bring that into culture is that I really invite people to be their true selves. Meaning, you know, and I think that's something that drives this millennials. They don't want to put up a facade. They want to bring in their true selves, meaning whoever they are, their talents, their gifts, their passions, what they care about. And again, that leads to the purpose economy. They want to be seen for who they are, and they want to have a say in it. And so if you give them that platform, and then also question some of the things that may have always been done in a certain way but don't make sense anymore, like who says that work needs to be performed in an office? Again, we're in Silicon Valley. Almost everyone is a knowledge worker here. Almost everyone can do their work, as I think you said it before, Amar, if they have their mobile phone, not even their laptop, right? So it's really, why shouldn't I work wherever I want, whenever I want? So that's also something that I see coming in as a new trend. And if we do not provide that, especially to younger generations, we may not be able to engage them long term, because they will find ways and companies that do afford them those opportunities.
Other thoughts on retention and engagement. I've seen, and all of us know that, of course, the paycheck is an important part of somebody's consideration whether or not he's working at a place, but the primary reason why somebody stays at a job or leaves a job is his immediate manager. And at my company, I make sure managers recognize that. That's the most personal relationship that the manager has to recognize, that if somebody's staying there, that's because of the manager, or if somebody's leaving, that's because of the manager. And we've seen that consistently, when people have left, and even with people who are in the company, one of the primary reasons is how their managers treat them. The other factor is, do they feel a sense of the company is in existence for more than just making money? I mean, does the company have a cause? Do they feel good about what the company does for not just its customers? So we think of at Accelerator, we think of, are we being responsible to three aspects? Are we being responsible to the environment? Are we being responsible to the community? And then are we being responsible to society? So we're a mid-sized firm. We're not VC funded. We are pretty much bootstrapped, self-funded. But we invest far more than our size in these areas. So as far as environment is concerned, we got certified as a green business. Now, for a company that doesn't own its building, that leases office space, getting certified as a green business is a bigger challenge, because you have to convince your landlord to make changes in your office space. So we went through those cycles. For example, one of the big changes that we made was having the landlord install a dishwasher in the kitchen. They never had that before, and we insisted that they do it. But the bigger change we made was we got rid of all paper cups, plates, spoons, no plastic forks and spoons in the office. So suddenly people who were used to coming into the break room and picking up a paper plate and using it and then throwing it in the trash had to use crockery that they had to rinse off and load a dishwasher. And that was a huge shift for our people. I mean, they revolted till they saw that we were serious about it, and that I was doing it and the other leadership was doing it. But once they came on board, they are evangelists about something like this. I mean, that's a small example of how you build a sense of purpose in the company, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. In fact, it saves us money now, because we're not spending on trash. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, you want to build a sense of a purpose beyond just serving your customers. And when people feel that this company is doing the right thing, there's a higher chance that they will want to stay at the company beyond, of course, they're looking for more money, but there's a lot of other things that they value.
In that regard, I remember, Britt, you were sharing a conversation with me about one of the companies you had worked with, and a very interesting retention program that you put in place. It had nothing to do with money, but you identified a particular trait of some of your employees that you then built a rewards program. on the cleaning, related to cleaning.
Oh, that
Yeah,
wasn't, that
I
wasn't
can,
you.
yeah. So
Oh.
before I give that as an example, you know, I'm not sure it's a very successful strategy to use perks as your primary way of retaining people, because we cannot compete with Google or Facebook or any of these companies in matching perks. And let's recognize that. But you know, the specific thing that Jennifer mentioning is, it's not a very expensive perk that we put in place, and incidentally, it got recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the top 10 perks in the country. And the way it started off is, this is several years back. You know, we were a much smaller company. We were, you know, internal staff was about 10 people, and 7 of the 10 people were women. And one Monday, one of my salespeople, who's a woman, was in the office, and she was genuinely looking tired or harassed, and I was like, "What happened? Why aren't you? It's Monday morning. Why would you be? You should have had the weekend to relax." She said, "Oh no, we had guests over yesterday, and you know, I spent the whole day cleaning my house, and so I really didn't get any rest, and so I'm a little exhausted." And just out of that conversation, somewhere, you know, I started thinking about it, and then we came up with this service where we engaged with a house cleaning service, and then every 2 weeks the house cleaning service goes to their house and cleans their home.
Oh,
Now it's not a free service, we subsidized it 90%, so there is a small cost involved, but we're paying 90% of it, so it's not like they're misusing it, they're using it when they need it, because they're paying a small co-pay. But you know, I put it in place and people were happy about it, and it worked out well. About a month or so after we put it in place, I happened to go to one of the employees' homes. They invited us for dinner. So I walked into the house, and her husband comes and gives me a bear hug. I was like, "What happened to you?" He said, "No, Amar, that house cleaning service that you put in place is the best thing you could have done for me." Because the poor guy was the one who was cleaning the bathroom every time, you know, they had to. So that's just an example of an innovative. I mean, you can innovate. I mean, you don't have to have expensive perks, but if you tailor it to the real needs of your employees, I think it can add value far beyond the cost it incurs.
Understand your employees and understand what really makes them tick, which is, I think, a key theme from all of the panelists, and put the right programs in place. Last point, EJ, and then we'll turn to open questions.
Yeah, no, again, Amar, great points. You know, what you mentioned a second ago also in terms of like, what we also learned since many years, people don't leave their company, people leave their boss. So regardless of what the name of the company is, it's your immediate person you're working with. You know, that's one of the best retention strategy, or then again a reason to leave. You know.
Questions?
I'm sorry.
Yes?
Yeah, I have a brief comment and then a question. You know, you referred to the low unemployment rate as making it increasingly difficult to attract talent and so on. And I remember seeing some statistics some time ago from Gallup indicating how many people are unengaged, who are not engaged at work. And the numbers were staggering. I just couldn't believe it. And I looked at different countries and I said, "Oh, this must not be the case in the Nordics. We are all engaged." No, it was the same.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, all these people in all these companies who are not engaged in their work, talk about, you know, why people would want to leave. So that's just a comment on that. The second, and then I have a question. Just last week, we heard that Toyota is investing $1 billion in setting up, actually it would be 2 operations, one in Silicon Valley, one next to MIT, to focus on artificial intelligence and big data. They're recognizing that they need to think about transportation in the next generation.
Yes.
So, how would you advise the Toyota management to get top talent in AI and big data, given that everyone else, and the Googles, Facebook, all the others are looking for the same talent? How would you advise Toyota to get the right people? and it's hard for a company coming in, and Toyota's had its reputation in low, been damaged a little bit over the last few years.
So I don't know Toyota well enough, right? But obviously starting with analytics might be a smart idea. I mean, that's probably also where the trend is going, right? It's all about big data and really using the analytics to, make informed decisions. And then it would tie back to the brand, and again, I don't believe in imitating that much, and maybe they can, maybe they cannot. But really, sort of build from within and say, okay, what do we want to stand for, right? So sort of the values approach. What's our culture? Sort of building that intentional culture. And what do the people we want to engage in, what do they really care about? And again, that sounds more like a marketing approach, but I think you have to, drive a recruiting strategy, a talent acquisition strategy around that. That's at a very high level, but I don't have insight into Toyota. I would, have to be there and engage in that. But if they have the analytics tool, I think that's a great way to start and really look at that data.
Yeah. Again, I think every company does it the same way. They first look internally who they have, then they go through, reach out through the job boards. But if they feel stuck there, to reach out to really the qualified folks with very specific skills. They have no other way but to reach out to third parties. Again, like the two of us, like Amar and myself. We have worked, for other famous companies. I can't talk about names, in the field, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Those folks, they have so many options on the table in the valley that you can put it up on 100 job boards and no one will apply. At least the people you are looking for, Toyota, the other folks, you can put it up on 100 job boards, they will not apply. You have to proactively reach out to them. There is no other way.
And if they're going to be near MIT, reaching out to the school before they're ready to hire, really developing a relationship one-to-one with people that are graduating with those degrees and building that transportation of the future brand would be a piece I would suggest.
Well, some of the companies like Uber has already rated some of their top universities of AI talent.
Right.
So they've already been there.
So, in addition to what Britt and EJ mentioned and Jennifer mentioned, some of the things that I would recommend a company like Toyota to do, and given the size of the company that they are, they can invest in these things. So the two recommendations I would make is, you're looking for true experts in this field, in AI. There's not a lot of them. And the ones that are true experts, a lot of them don't want to work as employees. They are really good at what they do. They bring expertise that they've cultivated over the last several years at different companies because they've consulted. So there's a pool of really good people that only will work as consultants. And so my first advice would be to be willing to hire people as consultants, people who are going to bring true expertise. And the second piece of advice I would have for them is to invest in hiring fresh grads or junior folks and training them for the long run. Because when you hire fresh grads or people with very little experience, you can train them the way you want them, but most important, you can train them into your culture. There is a much higher sense of loyalty when people are brought in through internship programs or brought in as fresh grads and trained because you've invested in them. Of course, you run the risk that you train them and some of them will leave and go away, but that's where your employment brand and your culture and your core values will matter. So the two pieces would be, hire experts as consultants if you can't hire them as employees. Hire a larger volume of fresh grads that you're training, so you're building your in-house pool of AI experts that over the long run will be sustainable.
And I also heard you say the word intern. So if the graduates from this year are already taken by Uber and Google, reach into the sophomores, the juniors, and begin to bring them into the queue so that by the time they actually graduate, you've built that relationship.
There is, however, there is a lot of competition already for all those folks, and again, the very large known companies in the valley, they reach out at a very early stage. If as a company, as a specific company, you are looking for those true experts, again, you have no other choice but to reach out to those folks. We happen to work right now on some of the artificial intelligence and machine learning folks. It doesn't work otherwise.
Yes.
Since this topic has come up, and it's been on my mind the whole talk, internship programs. I've worked at 2 high-tech companies for the last 10 years. And I had a manager who's a German gentleman that spearheaded an internship program that he just, did himself, I mean, it wasn't human resources, it wasn't my company, it was through, the university where he got his PhD and all his, physicists that he knew and everything. So I've worked for 10 years with diploma students, bachelor students, mostly from Germany because he was German, but some French, some Polish. How prevalent is that in what you do?
I'm super passionate about that because when I worked at Kiva, we had 100 interns per year. And in an employment population of only 100. But think about that. I mean, one, you get sort of cheap labor, right? That's one side. Obviously, you can criticize that, but it's nonprofit. But they get critical skills and a great start with a great brand to start their careers. And you get influx of fresh ideas, latest technology, everything that Jennifer mentioned ahead of this talk, on a continuous basis, and we will bring them in classes of 30. So 3 classes per year. 30, go through 6 months, next 30 with overlap, so there's handover. Now the previous interns train the new interns. Now they're already the seniors, right? So now they learn leadership. They give talks. They do things like market research for us because they see things, even markets, differently than we do. So I'm a huge fan of it, and Google is starting it now. I forgot the brand of it, but Software Bootcamp or something. So they try to teach high school kids, I guess, or just very junior, not even people who are in the workforce, just coding skills to build that pipeline. So yeah, absolutely great strategy. If you can, anyone can do it. I agree. It doesn't have to be HR. Actually, it's better if it's grassroots. And then you have, again, everyone is recruiting. Everyone is thinking about that. I think that's an excellent idea.
As a small side note, within Next Step, my consulting company, which we're 40 consultants, we have, over the last 10 years, we've had 12 interns that have each been with us anywhere from 2 to 10 years. And it's been a phenomenal experience. It's a very, very informal, unstructured program. Typically sons and daughters of our consultants or our clients, and it's kept us fresh, it's kept us alive, it's kept us getting a lot of things done that wouldn't otherwise have gotten done, and 2 of them have now come into the team. And I can't say enough good things about it.
And I would just like to add for a tip. We always also talk about, speaking of engagement and retention, about mentoring, because a lot of people want mentoring and coaching and growth, but also using that mentoring concept and use it as reverse mentoring. Also at Kiva we brought in school classes because we developed concepts that the whole microfinance concept was used in schools to actually educate kids about financing and how we make investment decisions through loans, and they see the return and repayments and risk and all of that. And we brought in those school classes and we gave them our business challenges and asked the exact same questions as we discussed at the leadership team meeting. I said, how would you do that? What features would you build on the website? You know, how did you choose your borrower? How did you make your loan decision? So all of that, and it's amazing what you can learn from whether it's your customers, bringing them in with focus groups, or again, sort of just take a different approach. You know, do more than bring your kids to work, but really engage them, not just face painting, right? But give them a business challenge and see what comes out of it.
EJ, Amar? Other questions? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, we talk a lot about millennials, and totally understandable, but perhaps you could comment on, say, someone 45 or over in the Silicon Valley. Many, and that's my cohort, feel unless you have something, don't bother applying. And no matter how you configure your resume, take off job experience and stuff, eventually they'll figure it out, and it crosses gender and it crosses, you know, background and stuff. It kind of seems the ceiling has been pushed down.
Right, how does the seasoned executive here in the Valley compete as a job candidate?
As opposed to being a consultant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or if I come back to the job hunting seminar we did with Charlotte, it's basically, as a candidate, I advise that you have to be findable. And by findable, this means you have to be findable in an electronic way. Believe it or not, every week I'm getting in the snail mail, I'm getting resumes. The folks probably didn't get the memo, but it has to be electronic, and it has to be electronic online, it has to be electronic offline. Offline, of course, is your resume. You know, you have to be findable there. Think of your resume like a search, and then of course, you know, through the social networking, the most famous, the LinkedIn's. You know, some folks also have their own resume, their own website. But it basically comes down to you have to be findable. It could be also that the way you see yourself is that it's not there. You know, like if I, for example, refer to myself, if I enjoy drinking a beer, but I don't have it on my profile, how can people, I mean, it's a stupid example, but you know what I mean. So I mean, actually it's not, you know. But you know, if it's not there, then how can people know that I enjoy drinking a beer, you know? So it's basically, look at it the other way around. Look at your profiles, online, offline. Is it all there, how you see yourself? And again, in the ideal world, you want to be findable. You will always be contacted rather having to reach out the other way around.
Yeah, and I have really good news for you. I was actually asked to go back to Europe and run a company that will focus, a search company that will focus on only people over 60. So there's some reverse discrimination going on, I guess, in Europe, because they do see that it's a market. So how many, like 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day in the US alone. So I think demographics will eventually help us, and I do think, I know there are companies that actually value experience, you know, sometimes over all the other great things. So it has to be a mix. But we are in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is tech-driven, and as we all know, in tech, everyone over 30 is old. That's tech speak, I guess, and that's a reality. I would say, based on what DJ said, you know, it's a game, and you have to learn the new rules of the game. So even if you've been very, very successful landing jobs and building a great career in the past, the rules may have changed. I've, again, coached a number of executives in career transitions, and it was always about, okay, what are the rules of the games now? How do we learn them, and how do we adjust? And then it's not about age, it's about vitality. It's more like, how do we portray? And do we portray that we can engage in the game as it is now, right? Do we come across as vital and engaging? And do we enjoy working with you know, actually all generations now, right? So we are in a place where, for the first time in history, we have the opportunity to work with 4 generations in the workforce, especially here in the US. Maybe not so much in Silicon Valley there, where my CEOs are 35, used to be 35, and I was the oldest in the company. So we can talk. I'm happy to offer you some connections.
You know, I mentioned Toyota earlier.
Yeah.
One segment Toyota is really focused on is the aging population in Japan. They need to serve them better. So I think older people are going to have great opportunities working with Toyota, helping them understand what the needs are and how to cater to that particular market as a new transportation segment.
So is it fair to say really understanding what the value proposition is of that seasoned executive and how they can bring the right level of seasoning and maturity and experience to organizations like a Toyota or a Google to match with the new generations?
Yeah, if I may add here, it is even in a place like Japan. I mean, I worked in Asia, 8 years in Japan and South Korea. So in those cultures, the whole issue and the respect of age is even more important. It is considered very, in a positive, Confucius thinking, not only the respect, but there is a lot of value in there. And as such, when you go into such a culture, it's even more important than what we have here.
Yeah.
I had a couple comments to your point. I certainly agree that there is, in many cases, somewhat of an unconscious bias when candidates are considered, and not just necessarily age. It's sometimes ethnicity, sometimes it's gender, and so there's certainly work on the employer side that needs to happen to recognize that this is happening. But from a candidate side, some of the things that we discussed as best practices for employers, I think apply to candidates also. So just as we're talking about employers need to understand what their audience is, I think candidates need to understand, unfortunately when somebody has several years of experience, there's several kinds of experience. Not all of it is relevant to a particular position. So it's a matter of an experienced executive recognizing what is it that the company is looking for, not necessarily, I have these 20 different skills and it's up to the company to figure out what can I do for them. It's really, looking at it from the company's standpoint. That is one. The other is, lots of times people when they're looking for a job are sort of shy about letting other people know. You cannot be the best kept secret if you're looking for a job. You have to be willing to stand up and, network and almost advertise yourself, because like EJ said, you need to be found. And when you're found, you need to be found in the best possible light. So you need to work on building your profile. You need to work on making sure there are recommendations. And then of course, when you do interview, it's as difficult for a younger manager to have an employee that is significantly older than them as it is for the employee to work with the younger. It's uncomfortable both ways, and so it's a matter of recognizing that and trying to minimize that discomfort by some of it is understanding the work environment of the potential employer and being dressed appropriately. I remember several years ago, I was talking to a friend who worked at Facebook, and I was asking him to introduce me to his manager. So because I run a business and I was hoping to engage with them. And so this friend of mine, this is the first time I was going to Facebook. So this was over 7 or 8 years back now, 7 years back maybe. So he said, Amar, what are you going to be wearing when you come to meet my manager? I said, I'll wear a suit and trousers and I'll come formally dressed. He said, no, come in shorts. This is seriously what he told me. He told me, come in shorts to meet my manager. Then you will, and when I went and met him, I didn't wear shorts, but I was wearing khakis and a shirt. His manager was 24 or 25 years old.
Wearing shorts.
And he was wearing shorts and flip-flops. So I'm just, it sounds funny, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is you have to adjust to the audience you're trying to approach.
Yeah, again, Amar, also just a second ago, you had also a good point. it's like what I usually advise also is like to an applicant is like, don't, I mean, I'm exaggerating now again, don't be on your knees and say, I'm looking for a job, but see the other way around, make a business proposal. You know, like the same way like on a company, on an executive summary, you would have on top, I mean, apart from all the details on the history, you have a summary on top, this is what I have done, but don't let me figure out as to what you want to be doing. So I always advise, apart from the summary, also put on top an objective, you know, what you want to be doing. And again, you know, if you do your homework, as Amar advised, you know, then about a specific company, a specific opening, make a business case. How can you help? You know, I can help you do this, this, this. Why? Well, here, this, and this is what I have done.
Other questions? I think there was, yes.
So, keying off a little bit from the earlier question about HR versus technical personnel. In R&D, and maybe particularly if you're a government contractor, there is a bit of a collision between what the technical staff does for recruiting and particular recruiting and what HR does. And for instance, when you were saying before that applicants want to have a communication saying you were considered, etc. There you get told, if you're on the technical side, which obviously I am, that no, you can't do that because if you say anything negative, we can get sued. And so, you know, there is a, it's almost a CP Snow, the two cultures communication situation between the founder, who doesn't know how to run a company and recruitment, but actually does know the community he's talking to, and HR who typically wants to do their best, make sure you don't get into trouble, follow all the rules, etc. So I'd like to hear your comments about how you join these two cultures in such a way that actually both sides are happy and you do get the best people.
Right, so specific around that example, or?
I can give you many, but I probably
Wow,
shouldn't.
maybe I should have more examples then. Well, on that example, you know, it's the what and the how, right? So what do you tell your applicants and how do you say it? So maybe you don't give them, I mean, you don't have, no one has the time to give them full feedback, meaning career coaching on what they should be doing differently, you know, when they apply or why they didn't make it. That's just not, you cannot go into that detail, but on the how, you can still keep them appraised of the process, you know, saying, you know, you are being considered, you know, here's where we are in the process, or we are currently, you know, we're here in the process and we'll notify you within 2 weeks. So you can give them like updates and you can tell them when the position is filled. And oftentimes it's really, really hard to pinpoint a reason why someone was chosen over another. So then it really comes down to, you know, someone was just a little more closely aligned with the profile and the needs of our department and our organization. It's really hard to give, you cannot give more extensive.
I would actually say that, if I may just
Yeah.
go back, it's more a problem of internally between HR and technical branch saying, who is allowed to communicate with this candidate and who should be doing it?
Well, that's really up to your organization. So maybe people always tell me I'm not typical HR, and I take it as a compliment. So I don't know where, because HR is, in my mind, should be serving. You know, we're serving the organization. I mean, we're part of the organization. There's not the organization, then there's HR. I mean, you know, maybe that will be a disconnect from it. It has to. You know, we help if talent is needed. We help make that happen. It's not an us versus them. So maybe start there. It really depends on how this is being defined as part of your process. I do a lot, and I usually own that communication just to make it actually easier for hiring managers, and they want that in the environment I'm in. But I've also worked in other environments where it was more like, you know, the hiring managers were very well trained and very, you know, owned it more or wanted to own it. And it was a little bit different. So it's not like one way or the other. It's figuring out what works for the organization and add the most value, by the way I see it, freeing up managers, hiring managers, so they can focus on what they really need to focus on to move the business forward. And I come in with my value proposition and say, okay, you have a talent need, I'll help you fill that talent need. And obviously the hiring, it's a collaboration, so it's a dance, it's going back and forth. But I have a clear process and it's defined, and I sit down with every hiring manager at the start and say, okay, how are we going to do the search? Here's how I would devise the strategy. What are you going to do to help me fill the pipeline? What else could we do? Where is this person sitting today? Like EJ said, you know, where should we even look? Not that they find us, but that we find them. So it's really devising a strategy in collaboration and then executing the strategy. I don't know if that addresses your some of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good answer. It was the HR answer, of course. No, but I understand where you're coming from, because, you know, like when we, for example, when a company hires us, we don't present, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of candidates, but it's usually a handful of candidates, you know, like let's say 5 finalists. And sort of like for the final person they decide they want to hire, we go out and we do reference checks. But we get the same answers, where in the past, sort of like you had all the details about the person, you know, who was willing to give you the reference. Nowadays you say, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you, talk to HR. Then we call HR, and HR says,
They give
well,
you the truth, right?
no, and HR says, well, yeah, the person worked for us from then until then. But that's all we can say. And it's all, unfortunately, because the lawyers are pushing this whole thing up because of liability, you know, because the company can get sued. So don't blame it on HR, but that's what